Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're the hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every day, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can view all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues that affect you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
Hello, everyone. This is a recording of the presentation for the open house of the full draft plan for Stoner Prairie, South Stoner Prairie. We held the meeting on December 19th with limited attendance due to a storm. So I am recording the presentation today, and it will be available online. Going through some of the land use concepts, vision, goals, and strategies, and the remaining portions of the process tonight. This has been a process that started in October 2023, and when it intends to go for adoption, it will be in August of 2025. Through this process, we've done an online survey. We've had 3 open houses or input forums. We've had a stakeholder interviews, developer focus groups. City staff has attended committee of the whole meetings to give updates. We've had 6 working meetings with a steering committee, and still to come is committee and commissions of the city for review of the full draft, with public hearings both at Plan Commission and Council. So I'll go through the vision, goals, and strategies for the neighborhood plan. First, the vision statement. South Stoner Prairie will develop as a complete neighborhood that creates diverse and affordable housing options, expands job opportunities, facilitates sustainable design and development practices, and promotes social equity. As noted here, there are 5 topics for goals: housing, mobility, economy, quality of life, and sustainability. Within each goal is strategies to achieve that goal. So goal 1 for housing is integrate a diversity of housing types to accommodate a variety of lifestyles, age groups, and income levels. Noted here is strategy to encourage a variety of housing types, forms, price points, and tenures. And 2, encourage building and site design to a transition between low intensity residential and intensive multi-unit residential, office, and mixed use. You'll see in the plan there are graphics that help to describe some of the strategies, and this is an example here of an existing neighborhood in Madison where they combine townhomes, apartments, and single family. They utilize park spaces and frontages to make changes in density and housing types. They also have variability even in the single family neighborhood, of some rear loaded on alleys and some with front loaded. And then in the lower part, you see some deeper lots with woodlands. So there's a variety of housing types within this development. This is something we're looking for in South Stoner as well. Strategy 3, concentrate higher density residential and mixed use developments along primary corridors to support public transit. If it were to extend here, a greater number of people living close by to those corridors allow that to be sustainable of a development and having users. 1.4, encourage traditional neighborhood design developments that allow for missing middle in small lot housing. This is a graphic that's been shared throughout planning with the idea that older neighborhoods in the past did have this variability of missing middle that doesn't exist now. and the interest to see that variety of housing types and options moving forward. Mobility goal is to implement safe, convenient, and attractive streets that are accessible for all ages, abilities, and modes of transportation. The strategy for that goal is to develop a convenient and connected multimodal transportation system that links the neighborhood to the city and to the county at large. And 2, require proposed streets to connect to existing streets and intersections where practical. That graphic we're seeing on this page kind of demonstrates that. That white line divides 2 developments with the connection of streets and connecting out to the main arterial. Third strategy under mobility is to discourage cul-de-sacs and dead-end streets in favor of connected streets that provide flexibility. And 4, design complete streets and utilize traffic calming and safety measures where appropriate to create a better street environment for pedestrians and cyclists. Economy goal, locate employment options near residential areas, supporting the local and regional economy and providing job opportunities. First strategy under this goal is to attract businesses that meet local and regional needs, provide job opportunities, mix of uses, and expand property tax base. 3.2, promote commercial and business park areas compatible with the scale of surrounding developments or screened to the extent practical. And 3, incorporate safe and convenient pedestrian, bicycle, and motor vehicle connections within and through commercial mixed use and business park developments. The example here is actually in Fitchburg, where there is a combination of a business park to the south with a residential neighborhood to the north. The orange line, orange arrow shows the road connection that is not directly to the arterial through the business park, but is providing access from the neighborhood into the business park without having gone out to the main road and back through. The yellow arrow shows that there is a pedestrian connection straight through from the neighborhood to the business park. Also notable is in the business park that the building types are smaller, closer to the neighborhood, while there are larger buildings, such as in the southeast corner here, that shows a much larger building further away that's further buffered from the neighborhood. Quality of life goal is to maintain streetscapes and open spaces that are accessible to all residents for recreation and enhance neighborhood character. Strategies under this goal is to design residential areas around the community gathering spaces, parks, schools, churches, community gardens. 4.2, plan parks that are vary in size and facilities to fulfill ranging recreational interests consistent with the Fitchburg Parks and Open Space Plan. And 4.3, make intentional multimodal connections between local and regional parks and open spaces. Example here of a neighborhood in Sun Prairie where there is a blend of different park spaces. The green circle showing your traditional park, yellow showing more of an urbanized boulevard, and then the red is a town center around mixed use. Strategy 4 under quality of life, design attractive streetscapes with street trees, lighting, and or low maintenance landscaping clusters along the major roadways. And 5, plan and design public infrastructure that is sustainable and low maintenance. And the 5th goal, sustainability, create an economically and environmentally sustainable development pattern, protecting existing natural features. Strategy 1, protect and restore environment by integrating natural features into open spaces for recreation, public gathering, or flood protection and stormwater management. 5.2, preserve existing tree canopy to include woodlands that will not be quarried. Notable, this neighborhood is primarily currently being quarried on the northern portion. So there are some portions that are wooded that may not remain after they're done with that operation. But if there are portions that are still existing after the quarry operation, the intent is to preserve those woodlands. 5.3, encourage higher density residential developments along collector and arterial roadways. Strategy 4, explore options to recycle quarry byproducts through site development. 5.5, encourage energy efficient buildings consistent with the city's energy targets. 5.6, consider opportunities for alternative energy use within the neighborhood design. Now I'll go through the progression of the land use concept that is the baseline that meets those strategies and overall goals. First, I want to note that this concept plan is what it is and what it's not. What it is a long-term vision and what's allowable if applying for development approvals. It supports identifying character and design parameters and identifying infrastructure needs to best serve that neighborhood and adjacent lands in a fiscally responsible way. But it's not suggesting property owners shall redevelop or be sold for development. It's not restricting the landowners from using their property as they're currently using it. Does not determine exact placement of roadways beyond connecting point A to point B of collector roads, meaning on the edge of their land that they're developing, they need to connect where we're presenting a major east-west connection, north-south connection. How that might meander within the development may be different in the ultimate plan. In the last year, it's not determining lots or specific building type placement. So now I'm past all the disclaimers. I did want to note that we did do several versions of the final preferred concept. It started with bubble diagrams. There were two. You're seeing the preferred one on the left there with the intention of higher density along Commerce Park, churning over to a major park to the south of there. There's two major east-west corridors that ultimately will connect to Seminole Highway and Grandview Road to the south, kind of blending down the density as you go south. There are a couple nodes of neighborhood mixed use presented and a primary school in the center of the development. So some changes from the bubble diagrams to the initial detailed concept here. Just go through each one of them. First thing I should note is the bubble diagrams describe, and I go back, kind of what the uses are intended in the northwest corner of this quarter area, but however, that is outside the study area. So moving forward, you see that plan, low density residential neighborhood that's outside of the study area that is already in the urban service area, had intentions for that neighborhood to the north there as the road network shows. But changes from the bubble diagram is one, identification of several collector roads, again, where I talked about connecting the endpoints. So there are suggestions that there be two roads that run north-south through the western half of this neighborhood, connecting to the south and up to the neighborhood to the north. Two, connection of collector A and the opportunity for that to connect out the Seminole to the east. Number three, the inclusion of business parks. So that's the purple that you see here. The school is still in existence in this diagram, but the neighborhood mixed use moves to the east side of Commerce Park, with business park making up the western portion of the Commerce Park Drive. It's hatched, meaning that it's an option, flexible land uses. Potentially that use between business park and the high density residential shown here is largely impacted by if there is a remaining high wall between the two quarry owners. So as quarry operations are ending, reclamation plans are put forward where you bring back the land to agricultural use, and you have to tie in at the property line to what elevation there is today. So if both quarries end up reclaiming it back, they would actually have to come to a point at that line. So there is kind of a high wall that would show up right here between that. That does not provide for likely use of business park along Commerce Park Drive. So that's why you see that blend of use between Commerce Park and the purple business park. If those lands were to be worked out, to be flattened between the two landowners, there's a greater opportunity for business park there. Further conversations happened with the landowners and the steering committee, and from that there were additional changes made. Here is presented where number one, Commerce Park originally did not extend past the park on the south end, with the assumption that there would be a major grade change from what was quarried on the north side of that line where number 1 lies right here. So quarry action would be happening to the north, no quarry to the south. Assume that there would be a major wall there. In further conversations, there is ability to extend that road, and so plan moving forward was that Commerce Park would extend through this neighborhood and ultimately connect to Grandview to the south. Number 2 is including higher density residential, the darker brown, on the east side of Commerce Park. If we go back, it was all this medium high density. It's transitioned here to having the higher density kind of mimicking what's on the west side of Commerce Park Drive. And the neighborhood mixed use in the pink has been extended south to include additional lands up to a future road. Number 3 is extension of high density residential all the way to Commerce Park. 4 is the movement of the school to lands that are outside the neighborhood. So if a school were able to work out with the landowner and find a location here, it's likely where we're showing here is labeled school, kind of more in the center of the neighborhood. If you look at broader range of neighborhood of Fitrona to Lacey, that provides for lands to be specifically for business park in this middle section here. Also notable is reworking the road network to suggest that additional road access into the neighborhood would come from Legend Rock Road at Lacey, where number 5 is. And number 6 is a revision of how Collector A could potentially develop over time. Currently, the original design, if we go back, was that it would go through what is currently solar farm that is not a end use or could not be an end use for those lands to the east. So there's plausibility that that road to Seminole Highway could still be where number 6 is labeled. But alternatively, there's an option to take Collector A to the south further and around that solar farm to reach Seminole Highway. And then even further, a final concept was drafted. This was after we've had preliminary engineering. So everything up to this point has been evaluating land use primarily. But at this final stage, we've done preliminary engineering to understand utility needs and stormwater management needs. And through that, we've determined that the land dedicated for stormwater could be reduced. So you see number 1 in the northeast, an expansion of the neighborhood mixed use all the way to the edge of the neighborhood. Number 2, inclusion of an NMU neighborhood mixed use in the southwest portion as you come in from Fitrona Road. Number 3, there was discussion that those lands here are wooded and that would not likely be quarried. And so preservation of that to one of those strategies that we talked about earlier would be preserve that area. Number 4, showing this trail network that could go through here that didn't exist in the previous concept. Number 5 is actually incorporating a trail, the red dashed lines, all the way from Lacey through this neighborhood and hopefully all the way to Grandview. And then number 6, in some of this additional trail network, it was felt that it was not necessary to include it on the section between Collector A to Collector D along Collector B. So that portion has been removed with the replacement of the areas that are shown in 4 and noted on 5. So again, I just want to touch on the idea that this area for the school is outside of the neighborhood, but through discussions with the steering committee, it was important throughout this whole process to consider a school in these lands. We did discuss with the district about the interest here. They are looking for these parameters listed on this slide of what is an ideal location. And there's interest potentially from the school to locate here with the amount of units that we're talking about in a walkable neighborhood. If it were to be worked out with the landowner, likely could be in the portion that is circled with a park in addition, potentially, that reduces the school needs if there's a shareable park. So what I described earlier was the concept. Again, that gets to parameters of design, kind of blending of mixes of uses desired, but ultimately the policy document is the future land use map. When the city created their comp plan, they identified this area as a growth area and suggested that there would be some additional planning, which is this process, to determine what those future land use categories should be for these lands. So that is why we're going through this process and identifying the future land use for future proposals from landowners and developers. So that concept I showed, this is more of a version that is policy document. So you don't see all the road networks that were presented in that concept. You see the major collector roads, but it's not presenting exactly how any interior local roads are being designed. So you see those categories, and there would be parks, likely, and additional parks within these areas, dependent on requirements per code. So in total, we're talking potentially between around 1,300 more units, up to 2,200 more units, depending on how densely the area grows. Notably here, we divided out a little bit also by landowners, because obviously these are going to be built individually by landowners unless additional lands are purchased. But so just wanted to note that we're talking about potentially, up to 5,000 more people could be in this area, depending on household size. So I'm going to go a little bit about the preliminary engineering. We looked at traffic here, and so this is evaluating per full build out by 2045. We base it on certain home types and commercial types. So we did have to make some decisions here just to get to a idea, a projection of number of trips that would be in and out of this neighborhood. It assumes a factor based on the median. So every future land use category has a range of density. So like low density is 2 to 5 units per acre. So we took the median of that and used that forward to determine the number of housing units. We also include here additional growth potential of 0.5 for areas that would be developing outside of this area. Typically in Dane County, you use 0.4, so be more conservative. And also that conservatism, we also included a 20% increase on the total trips. So basically what I'm getting to is we took a median, but we added a lot of contingencies and conservancy on that number to equate to a certain number of trips through the neighborhood. What does this tell us? That tells us that, and we're showing two options here because we had that flexible area. So that number 6 you see on the graphic could go to high density residential, or it could be business parks. So that's why option A is all residential. Option B is including business park there. So in total, we're looking at AM total trips between 1935 to 2005. And then in the evening, 2180 to 2255. We kind of a breakout assumptions of where traffic would flow through the neighborhood and out. You see 10% to the west, 15% to the north, 30% to the east on Lacey, and 15% east on Collector A. With that trip information, we're also able to look at specific intersections of, is there warrants for controls? Meaning, is there a signal? Is there a roundabout? Is it free flow? So the evaluation of Commerce Park and Lacey in the box that you see in the north suggests that at full build out, there would be needing for controlled intersection. Staff has interest in seeing that to be a roundabout. There's a roundabout going in at Fitchburg and Lacey to the west. There's already roundabouts to the east towards Seminole Highway. Generally, they work in controls to be the same roundabout after roundabout after roundabout, because that just helps with efficient flow. Then we also looked at Collector A in Fitrona in the west. And based on full build out, it's not recommended for any controlled intersection. You would likely have a stop sign on collector A before you would get on to Fitch-Rona. There will be some longer queues potentially for left turn on Fitch-Rona. So ideally you're at level of service, LOS, D or better. It does project at full build out, it may be an F. However, going to a controlled intersection can create more accidents for people being impatient with trying to get into traffic on Fitch-Rona. And so it's not suggested that any additional controlled intersection is necessary here, but obviously as it develops, it can be reevaluated. I did want to note that we intended for collector B to the south to have the opportunity to continue west past Fitch-Rona. There is a potential proposed development in the town of Rona on the west side of that road. And so further modifications may take place in considering if that development goes forward on where that collector B actually lines up with Fitch-Rona. Talking about utilities, start with stormwater management. I noted earlier that the sizing of the basins were reduced. This is what you see that where there's a dividing line between a western development circled here to the eastern development. So there's a split line again where that one wall would potentially be between the two landowners. And so it all would drain east of that line. And so you see two wet basins and a dry infiltration basin in the center that will serve that area. The western half, we are presenting that there would be a split roadway here with dry basin infiltration in the center of it, similar to if you went to Sherrill Parkway. That's a similar design in in Fitchburg. All water here in the lower portion within the neighborhood would funnel to the west here along the edge there. We are presenting how the water would flow to the north, which is outside the neighborhood. There is a small portion in the business park here that would funnel through that system that would run out to Fitch-Rona and head north. Did want to make another note that on the eastern portion, the circled here, that drains to a closed depression. So that closed depression requires increased standards, noted here in the orange, taking up to 100% pre-development infiltration volume and notable increases in volume control necessary in that sizing. Water main, you'll see generally everything is looped, meaning you want developments to have multiple connections in case one it breaks or is needed to be shut down to still serve the neighborhood. So you see that is intended here. Again, a lot of the street network here is conceptual. The local road design will be by each development. So this is just giving a representation that it can be served in this area without additional water infrastructure beyond the piping that is sized based on the development along it. Sanitary design, notably, practice has been to use 100 gallons per day per person for evaluating capacity. The fixtures people put in today are a lot better low flow, and we can comfortably drop that to 80 gallons per day. It's actually been a study in Wisconsin that showed 53 is the average. So we're still being conservative at 80. I'm just making that note because that still impacts what capacity is for serving into this neighborhood. We did look at options for how to serve all of the neighborhood and wanting to not exceed 30 feet in depth for that utilities, because as you go down, it gets more expensive. This is split, just like stormwater, eastern half and western half here. The blue outline shows how the eastern will be served from Lacey Road. The connection shown in that green line is what we're looking at for sanitary design. But notably, there's potentially capacity issues to what we project for how to serve at full build out for this, because city does want to reserve some of that Lacey Road connection for additional development along Lacey. So there would need to be considerations of either density needs to stay a little bit lower than we are projecting, or there needs to be another connection point. Maybe it's collector A here that connects out to Fitch-Rona. Maybe there's another service that comes and works out with Edgewood College. For the western half, we are looking at a connection either to Fitch-Rona Road, where number 1 is located, through the neighborhood that is intended to be developed in the future here outside the neighborhood of our study area, or number 2, from an extension of Madison's MMSD extension of sanitary design. Now, there's a couple things to note on both of these. Number 1, Fitch-Rona Road, there's intention to line the clay pipes that exist along Fitch-Rona Road. However, that size of those pipes are not able to serve the majority of the lands. We would need to upsize that pipe. So consideration of not just lining the existing clay pipe, but to replace. But there's also potential that the entire development we're seeing here in the neighborhood and surrounding areas would exceed what could be served through that system. So there's likely that you would need both 1 and 2 here, but notably on number 2, there's currently not a design for that. That's going to be starting soon, but that notable development here may impact exactly how that could connect into the neighborhood. All right, that was a lot of information. Appreciate if you're able to go through this whole presentation and learn from this. I will note that the concepts, the goals, and strategy boards are available at City Hall right now and will be for some time. Comments and feedback can go to Brad Sipple. His information here is on this slide. What's remaining for the schedule is a steering committee meeting likely in February to go over the whole plan and have a recommendation by the steering committee. And then in April and May, having city committee and commission reviews. Staff only would attend those, so that there would be a 30-day window for then a plan commission public hearing in June and a council public hearing and adoption in August. That is our current schedule. That may be modified, but the intention is to have this approved by the fall of 2025. So I appreciate the time and have a happy new year.